All right, evening guys, just waiting for some more persons to join us before we begin. Is it that you guys are coming from a different class and because it's 9 minutes after the hour and this is the late hour, this is not like 5 o'clock where, persons are coming from work.
Sir, there was a class before this, but I'm not sure because I personally am just coming home, so I'm just joining a class right now. So I'm not sure
Okay,
what happened in the other class.
okay. All right, so I'm just gonna wait another 2 or so minutes before I begin. All right, good evening, everybody.
Evening, sir.
Evening, sir.
I'm still a little bit under the weather, but feeling just a little better, but still under the weather. So today, we're going to move on from international trade theories and look at modes of entry for international businesses. So let me share screen quickly. And let me close this. All right, so one of the things that I want you to make note of is the fact that your mid-semester is next week. You're going to do your mid-semester next week, Friday. During the class time, it will be done on Canvas. So it will be time sensitive. You will only have one attempt and you'll be given 1 hour to do the exam. All right. So it's very important that you pass on the information to your peers so that they don't miss the exam, because I am not going to give another exam. There will be only one exam. Only one exam. All right. So today we're going to focus on international business entry strategies. But before I go any further, does anyone have any question, queries, concerns? I take that as a no. Silence.
Yes, sir. I would have a question.
Or go ahead.
Sir, regarding the mid-semester exam, is
Mhm.
it a case that I know you said it's 1 hour, but which day next week? You said next week. Which day next week?
Friday.
Friday?
Yep.
Isn't the Friday class 5 to 7, sir?
No, the Friday class is 7 to 9.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you.
All right. All right, so today we're going to look at international business entry strategies. And before I go any further, I just want to point out what are some of the learning objectives of this evening or of this week, to be honest. So one, you should be able to identify reasons for a business deciding to go international. 2, critically examine the different strategies to use to go international. And finally, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of different entry strategies. And we have some examples there. For example, importing, licensing, franchising, wholly owned subsidiaries, strategic alliances. We're going to look at those in detail. But we just want to remind ourselves in terms of what is an international business. And we know, for example, that an international business is any company that does or participates in the exchange of goods and services across national borders. So that is very, very important, that the exchange in terms of goods and services are happening across national borders. We also want to make note of the fact that we do have, so we have to make a part of what makes an international business or any business at all, is that they're engaging in commercial transactions. All right, so that is very, very important. So it's important to understand an international or multinational or multilateral organization, for example, a World Trade Organization, which is very different from an international business. So try not to get the two concepts conflated. So need for international business. Why is there a need for international business? Anybody can tell us why do you think international businesses are needed? You know, what are some of your assumptions about the need for international businesses?
Sir, international businesses are needed so that to supply each nation or country with certain goods that they cannot produce or make themselves.
All right, so countries need international businesses because they cannot produce certain goods and services for themselves. Yes. Anybody else?
I guess it will be related to also like cultural communications, I guess.
Okay, yes. All right, so
Sir,
those, yes.
and I remember the first a few classes back, you might have gave us a video to watch introducing trade system, and in that video would have told us regarding that certain countries, as Kenya would say, doesn't have that, so they would import materials and goods and equipments from other countries so that they can import it to that country so that they can finish that final good.
And international businesses also participate in terms of research and development, in corporate social responsibility. So they play a multitude of roles. You know, they are also needed in terms of for transfer of technology. So some countries are more advanced in terms of their development. So the companies that are there, the kinds of technologies that they use to solve their own problems. It's always good to, you know, international businesses help other countries to learn those kinds of things. Even in terms of transportation and ways and means of communication, international businesses themselves participate in or help. They facilitate that. So need for international businesses, they help in the flow, and some of what I said earlier causes the flow of ideas, services, and capital across the world, offers consumers new choices, and I would say offers consumers varied choices, and sometimes offer consumers affordable choices, permits the acquisition of a wider variety of products. So many Jamaicans who originally could not afford television. I remember I remember at one point when television, or the type of television you had in your home in Jamaica, kind of spoke to your status. Then it was the VCR, it kind of spoke to your status. But because of international businesses now operating all over the world, those kinds of household items are far more affordable. So even in many inner city communities across Jamaica and across the world, you have curved TVs. These are persons, people are able to kind of, you know, get these kinds of things at affordable rates, or even because of the movement of people. All right. So international businesses also facilitates the mobility of labor, capital, and technologies of people are working all over the world. I actually started a new job on August 8 in Canada. And in that interview, I was able to kind of talk about my own experiences when I was a dean at Excelsior and as a senior professor. Well, we use the word professor here in a kind of loose sense. International businesses also provide challenging employment opportunities, which sometimes are not afforded in home countries. So people are able, so you can think about even international football companies employing Jamaicans to participate in the various leagues that are there, because football companies are international businesses as well, and that in and of itself assists, open doors for many Jamaicans and for many people from poorer countries or from developing countries. I'm not sure why I'm developing a migraine. I'm not sure why. Reallocates resources, makes preferential choices, and shifts activities to a global level. Sometimes that can be good or bad in terms of the reallocation of resources. Sometimes the resources are taken out from the quote unquote mother country, shipped elsewhere, or it exists in the domestic country, in a particular country, but it's not, but locals are unable to access it. And just a very basic example is like Jamaican beaches. In other Caribbean countries, I think in Trinidad and in Barbados, their beaches are actually for free. You can access it. The locals can access it for free. In Jamaica, we have had many international businesses that have come in and they have monetized access to the beach, to the beaches, and Jamaicans have always had an issue or always have issues with that, because we feel that we should not be paying to access things that the government did not create on their own, but were naturally there. All right, so the types of international businesses, and this we're going to get into some specificity now. So we have export, import trade, foreign direct investment, licensing, franchising, and especially in foreign direct investment, we're going to start a discussion on foreign direct investment, and then continue that discussion because there's an entire history in terms of foreign direct investment. And if I'm going too fast, you can ask me questions, okay? So how will an idea, good, or service fit into the international market? That is something that a domestic business that wants to go international would have to think about. Should trade or investment be used to enter a foreign market? Should supplies be obtained domestically or abroad? What product adjustments are necessary to be responsive to local conditions? What are the threats from global competitors, and how can these threats be counteracted? So these are any company that intends to go international. These are some of the questions that they would have to be able to answer, and answer in a very, what I would want to call, in a very profitable way. So why engage in international business? It's important, to expand sales. So sometimes the market in which you are, you're in control of that market, right? So there's an abundance of that. So you want to expand sales, you go into a different country. Acquire resources. There are times when it is actually some of the resources that are needed to produce certain things are not in your home country. So it makes sense to go international, either have to do some sort of partnership or franchising or acquisition of a company in another country. Minimize risk, meaning that you're able to kind of shoulder the burden, get investors involved. You don't want to use your own, invest only your money, but want to bring others in on board. That kind of minimizes the risk. And actually also just helps, it always helps to have different views or business perspectives in relation to when you are thinking of going international. And this is just an example, and I've shown this before, but it becomes very relevant now. It's still very relevant in terms of understanding how international businesses operate and the kind of, what I would want to call, the kind of logistics that are involved, where the idea is produced, or the idea is created in one country, the concept is approved in another country, then the concept design or the prototype is developed in Singapore, then the engineering design is in Taiwan, where the computer components are made, and the final assembly in Singapore, Australia, China, and India. And we're going to look at some examples, especially in relation to India and in Taiwan. Just today, the US Senate passed a bill, because what they are trying to do now is to start producing the chip that are needed in cars and phones, so forth, to be produced in America. They're trying to get it back, the manufacturing of those chips in America and away from the Asian countries. So reasons for growth in international business: rapid increase and expansion of technology, and we know this to be true. Transportation is quicker while costs are lower. If you live in developed countries like Canada, or even Canada, the United States, the UK, in Asia, in China, transportation is very quick. So you have the subway system. So in Canada, you have the subway, which moves very fast. You have the streetcar. It's slow for us, but it actually carries it carries loads of people. It's very convenient. In Toronto, many people don't even bother to drive, and I know that too in New York, because transportation is very quick. People are able to go on the move. They can go to work. They can go to work, get to work very quickly. They don't spend a lot of time in traffic, so the production or the productivity rate is much higher in those particular countries. All right, communication enables control from afar, which means that the owners or investors do not necessarily have to be physically located in a home country in order to actually operate their international business. And the liberal government policies on trade and resources, which means it goes back to what we were talking about, liberalization. And this is where the World Trade Organization comes into play now and says to member countries that they must implement policies and legislations that will allow for free trade to flow, because that's part of the benefit or the incentive of being a part of the world trade or being involved in world trade. All right, development of institutions that support international trade, mention as well international, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank. In terms of liberal government policies, for example, In the United States, there's always a discussion about less government involvement, trying to reduce the taxes that companies pay. In Jamaica, we have the same issue. We have the same conversation sometimes politically, in a very politically incorrect way, where we want to blame China Harbor of coming in and trying to take over Jamaica and doing all of the work, when we're realizing that the local contractors themselves, they are very unprofessional, very unethical, and sometimes they are not as up to, they don't have the requisite skills that are needed. All right, consumer pressures, people are demanding a lot now. So even Netflix, even Amazon Prime, they now have to make movies in all languages, because people across the world are complaining, why are you making only English movies? We don't speak English. Why can't you make movies that reflect our culture and our language and our identity? All right. And increased global competition. Companies, there's so much competition going on all over the world. Companies are always trying to see how best they can retain their market share. So part of how they do that is to actually go international, is to move the local business or the domestic business and make it international, enter into different markets. All right, so international entry modes are how companies go international. They're exporting, licensing, and franchising. And we're going to look at what those things mean. Partnership and strategic alliance, acquisition, and we have greenfield venture. And we're going to look at what these particular things mean. So exporting. So I want for you to just to look at this particular image, and I'm giving you like 2 or so minutes to read it and tell me what is your understanding of exporting being one way of how a business may go international. Anybody ready to talk?
Not yet for me, sir.
When you think about exporting, what are you thinking? What comes to mind?
Sir, goods leaving the country that you're in now to go abroad.
All right, so domestically produced goods that are being shipped to be sold overseas, right? And usually they have this is one way of how a company may go international. So instead of setting up a business in the other country, they just said, okay, I'm just going to export. So they kind of work with local contractors or a local company in the country that they want to export to. And they will take on, for example, the distribution, the marketing, the promotions, and all of that on behalf of the company. And the argument is that most companies, that want to go international, this is usually the first way or the easiest way they enter the international market. They tend to just do exporting, right? Do we understand?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Right, so as it says here, exporting is the sale of products and services in foreign countries that are sourced from the home country. All right, so, and they talk a little bit about some of the disadvantages of exporting. And one of the biggest disadvantages of exporting is that you literally don't have any control over the distribution and promotion of your product, right? And sometimes exported goods, they face higher tariffs and even quotas. Sometimes the profit margins are not as high as they could be. And they, as I said before, they don't have a lot of control over the local distributor and or marketing companies. They don't have a lot of control over that. All right. So this is one way of how a company may go international. Ethical concerns. The first thing I would want to ask you, when you hear the term ethical concern, what comes to mind? What are you thinking when you hear ethical concern?
Sure, like the concern of how it's going to impact the environment and the people around you in that environment.
Right. So many companies, so when you're exporting certain goods to other countries, part of what needs to be considered is like the impact of the products on the natural environment, but not only on the natural environment, even on people's health. It could be that it's going to affect people's health. Sometimes it's going to actually affect what people consider to be their cultural identity or their religious identity. So that is something that needs to be considered when a company decides to use export as its way of entering the international market or to participate in international trade. Understand?
Okay.
Okay. All right, exporting. So firms export mostly to countries that are close to their facilities because of lower transportation costs and the often greater similarity between geographic neighbors. So you find, for example, that a lot of exporting happens with the United States to Jamaica, Jamaica to other countries, United States to Canada, Canada to United States, Canada, United States to Mexico, Mexico to United States, because they're in close proximity. Usually try not to export to countries that are way out because it's going to incur a lot of supply chain, let's call them supply chain costs. All right, and they give us some examples here. I'm not going to read all of going through all of these. This is something that you're going to read on your own. All right, so I want for you now to read and tell me what is your understanding of licensing and how does it relate to the notion of going international, of a business going international?
So it's just like how we have like the KFC franchise in Jamaica. They
No,
don't.
so hold on. Licensing is not the same as franchising.
It's two different things.
Yes, be careful now.
So it's so confused though because we don't. Hold on, sir. Let me figure this out.
Yeah, and somebody else was about to say something. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm saying good evening. I just joined.
Okay, evening.
What was the question that you asked?
So what do we understand by the term licensing and it as a way for a company to go or to enter into an international market? Just read the snippet and just tell me your understanding of it.
Oh. Sir, as it relates to licensing still?
Licensing, sir, pronouncing it correctly.
Licensing.
Yes.
as it relates to that word. I think that these are, I would say that I'm trying to put it away as persons or stakeholders, persons who have interest in the business.
No. So you can't use stakeholders. You have to use the right word. So a company.
Yeah.
You can't use stakeholders.
So persons like the government, you'd have respective bodies.
No government. Hello. Licensing has nothing to do with government.
No, sir. So I tell about the people and when they have to go through to get certain documents.
No. But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about in terms of licensing. You're talking about bureaucracy, and I'm not talking about bureaucracy. I'm talking about licensing as one mode of a company going international.
Oh.
That has nothing to do with going anything to do with any kind of bureaucratic discussion. It has nothing at all to do with that.
All right. So I'm going to listen because I'm just join something to know what I discussed earlier.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Would I don't know what it name. Like how I have the let's say I don't remember, like the Hyundai or Hyundai, what I pronounce Hyundai. Those that company here in Jamaica, they sell those type of cars. Would that be a form of licensing?
Yeah, but you still have not told me what you understand by the word. You're giving me an example, which is different.
So I understand that how it works is that you are not, instead of you having to make deals with someone, let's say
instead of you, who's the you you're talking about?
Sir, I don't know how to explain this.
Instead of a company, that's all you need to say.
Sorry. Instead of a company making a deal with a singular person here in Jamaica to sell them a vehicle, and they have to now make the vehicle there and import it here and deal with all of those stuff singularly with just that one person, they can now give the license to somewhere in Jamaica and allow them to now be able to I don't know what the word is. Allow them to now sell the vehicles or products to the country.
So all licensing, it just means that a company in one country is giving permission to a company or a person in another country to use their intellectual property, because they don't want to take on the expense of setting up shop in the company. So it says a company that wants to go into an international market quickly while taking only limited financial and legal risks might consider licensing agreements with foreign companies. So there is one company that might give license to another company in a country. So let's say a country in Japan. An international licensing agreement allows for a foreign company called the licensee to sell the products of a producer, the licensor, to use its intellectual property, whether it be patents, trademarks, or copyrights, in exchange for royalty fees. So the terms that we want to, if we want to underline anything to kind of help us to understand, is there is a licensing agreement, there is intellectual property, and there is the exchange for royalty fees. So you gave the example of, I think, Ionda. Was it Ionda you said?
Yes, sir.
So Ionda, which country is Ionda in? Originally, which country is it manufactured? Let's use Toyota Jamaica. Toyota Jamaica would be somewhat of an example of licensing. We could use Toyota Jamaica. Even Carib is actually an example of licensing, because what Carib does, Carib has to sign an international license agreement to actually use the intellectual property of movies, and they have to pay royalties to the owners. So here they say, here's how it works. You own a company in the United States that sells coffee flavored popcorn. You're sure that your product would be a hit in Japan, but you don't have the resources to set up a factory or sales office in that country. You can't make the popcorn here and ship it to Japan because it would be too stale. So you enter into a licensing agreement with a Japanese company that allows your licensee to manufacture coffee flavored popcorn using your special process and to sell it in Japan under your brand name. In exchange, the Japanese licensee would pay you a royalty fee. Is that clear? Do we understand?
Yes, sir.
So that's another way of how a company might enter international trade or in an international market. So licensing usually essentially permits a company in the target country to use the property of the licensor, which again is kind of a repetition. Such property is usually intangible. And by that they mean when they say trademarks, you can think about like Coca-Cola. So whatever the name Coca-Cola and the look and image of that, like Nike. So you have Toyota Jamaica. I think we have we probably have some other car, thing. Patents, when you're talking about patents, you're talking about things relating to like drugs, pharmaceuticals, and production techniques. The licensee pays a fee in exchange for the rights to use the intellectual property. You see, even you can think about this, even the kind of conversation or the controversy or debate with I think it's between VP Records and Mr. Vegas, where Mr. Vegas is saying that he's not getting, he's suing because he was not getting his intellectual, he was not getting his royalties. All right. So, and part of the reason why some companies use licensing is because it reduces their operational costs. It reduces the amount of money that they would have to use in terms of investment. It prevents them having to deal with the local bureaucracy. They don't have to necessarily deal with trying to get through the red tape, things like that. It limits their risk to exposure because at the end of the day, they are not actually putting up any money, right? They're the owner of the trademark or the patent or the owner of the intellectual property is actually not putting up any money. So if the company or the licensor, the licensee is using the intellectual property and they don't make a profit, that's okay, because the owner of the intellectual property will not lose. When you make a profit, of course, part of that profit you have to pay in terms of royalties. All right, hopefully it makes some sense. Another popular way to expand overseas is to sell franchises. All right. So I want for you to read this now and tell me what is your understanding of franchising as another way of how a company may go international or enter international trade or participate in international trade. This is franchising. I am listening. Franchising.
Well, just so they wanted to hear or understand, on it, sir.
Yes. So what is franchising, and how does it help us to understand, or how is it used by a company to participate in international trade?
Okay, so we just are trying things too. So what I understand about franchising is it could be a way to like help a business or a company grow, and you can get a business out there in the global economy. And regarding international the international exporting something that is what sir? Exporting.
Remember, I'm asking you the same questions for all of them, you know. All you have to do is to tell me what it means and how does it help us to understand a company participating in international trade. It's the same thing for all of them.
Okay. Have a time made over
Sir,
like
sir, I'm thinking that it helps a company to gain more awareness and a competitive advantage in the market so that they can go internationally.
How so? You haven't so that part is missing. How so? How does it help a company to go international or to participate in
Sir,
international trade?
sir, by it helps you to put your product out
Stop
there.
saying you. Stop using the second
The
person.
company.
It helps a company. It helps
Yes.
a company. The company is specific. A company is general.
Yes, sir. It's help a company to get their product out there in the market. To
How so? You're still
such
not
as
answering my.
advertising,
No, so you haven't scratched the surface. People, look at it very carefully. Can you look up the word franchise for me? Can you Google it for yourself and tell me what's your understanding of the word franchise? Because there are so many franchises in Jamaica. And many of you go to KFC and McDonald's and all these Popeyes and all of those are franchises. So I have to ensure that you understand the concepts. So let me highlight a few words. Anybody wants to try now?
sure, go ahead, sir. Understanding on franchise based on what I just search up on Google is like a grant that's like a company would like give to a smaller group to like carry out specific activities relating to the company. Like for example, like I said, KFC and then something that yeah, they are about the place. So that's my understanding.
I still don't know what you're saying to me, to be very honest. So what's the first thing I underline? What's the first set of things that I underline?
International franchise agreement.
So the word agreement is important, right? Right, people?
Right,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. So the first thing you want to think about with a franchise is that it's an agreement between, let's say, two companies or between a main company and others who want to use the company's brand name. Let's put it that way. So one is an agreement. Franchise are usually international, and remember, you're doing the course. The course itself is called International Business. So clearly we're talking about international trade, or we're talking about an international business. So remember, the discussion we're having is, how do domestic companies in their respective countries participate in international trade or enter international markets? Another way is by franchising. A franchise is an agreement between a company, which is called a franchisor, and a foreign company, which is called a franchisee. So it's an agreement between a company and a foreign company, or sometimes it's more than one company, but I'm simplifying it. So one company that owns a certain brand name or has a certain brand name, or let's put it that way, an agreement between a brand name company and companies that want to use the brand name. Do we get that part?
Yes, sir.
So they sign an agreement. So instead of KFC, for example, setting up shop in Jamaica on their own, they say, okay, let's not do it. Let us sign an agreement with local individuals or companies and let them use our brand name. This is why KFC in Jamaica tastes different from KFC. If anybody has ever traveled, you notice that the KFC in the United States or the KFC in Canada does not taste the same way as a KFC in Jamaica, because it's a franchise and the local taste is different. So the company or the franchisee who signs the agreement with KFC, that is, I think KFC is based in the United States, they are given permission to use KFC's brand and the way of how they make the chicken. The way the process, this is why it says that the franchisor, which is the owner of the brand name, is responsible for training, advertising, and new product assistance. So they would have given the local owners or the local operators of KFC in Jamaica the way of how to cook the chicken. But of course, the profit that is made by the company, the brand name company gets a share of that. Do we understand?
Okay, so yes, sir.
I don't get the impression that everybody understands. Hello.
Yes, sir, I understand.
Understand? Okay. So again, remember the discussion we're having, and I go back to that what we're talking about is how local companies in their countries participate in international trade or enter international markets. We said the first way is through exports. In other words, they're selling their goods and services to other countries, or they're sending their goods and services to other countries. Let's put it that way, right? Licensing now is where somebody is given permission to use the intellectual property of a company in exchange for royalties. Franchising is where there is an agreement between a brand name company in one country and companies in another country, and they're given permission to use the brand name. And of course, there's an agreement in terms of how they use it. But the owner, the brand name company, also operates, helps out with training and advertising and all of that. All right, of course, they two share the profit. So those are three ways: export, licensing, franchising. Another way now, so contract manufacturing and outsourcing. This is another way. Because of high domestic labor costs, many US companies manufacture their products in countries where labor costs are lower. And we know this. Even Donald Trump, he has a Thai brand, and the Thai brand is actually manufactured in China because it's cheaper to manufacture it there. This arrangement is called international contract manufacturing or outsourcing. A US company might contract with a local company in a foreign country to manufacture one of its products. It will, however, retain control of product design and development and put its own label on the finished product. Contract manufacturing is quite common in US apparel business, with most American brands being made in a number of Asian countries, including China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. So let me underline a few things here or highlight. You can just use the term outsourcing. So one company contracts another in a foreign country to manufacture one of its products. It doesn't have to be one. It doesn't have to be one. All right. Can anybody think of an example with this? Can you think of an example? I'm going to actually go for an example. Is it right here? Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
What is this?
What is it? Coconut water, okay.
What's the brand?
I'm gonna see it's a clear, sir.
Grace?
Grace?
Sir, it looks like Grace.
Right.
I can't see, sir. Is Grace?
I'm not sure if I can't see what you're looking at, so I can't see.
Sir, you're in a small screen. Because you're sharing screen, so just your little tiny screen.
Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can. Probably I need to stop sharing screen for.
We're seeing you better now, sir.
Yeah, are you seeing it now?
Yes, sir. It's Grace coconut water.
Grace coconut water, all right. And we would assume that it is manufactured in Jamaica, right?
Yes, sir.
Because Grace is a local brand. However, and this is why I was so upset when I found out that it was actually made in, I think it's, they probably probably don't put it on it anymore because them hear about me. Because I complained so bitterly, I was so upset. Manufactured, I think in some, where the hell they say? They look like they take it off, but it's actually not, I think it's Honduras actually. It is actually made in Honduras and shipped all over, including Jamaica. But it's primarily sold to, you know, we're in diasporic countries where they have a lot of Caribbean people, especially Jamaicans. So this would be a perfect example of it, of outsourcing, because it's cheaper to make it in that country versus making it in Jamaica, because JPS alone would kill them in terms of production costs. Or electricity or energy costs, I should say, not production costs, but energy costs or energy costs. So that's an example of outsourcing. Do we understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I have to, because I have I'm still recovering, and then I'm not supposed to be doing so much talking. Ugh. So the more I talk, the more I cough. So sorry about that. So thanks to 21st century information technology, non-manufacturing function can also be outsourced to nations with lower labor costs. Can you think about this, the example in Jamaica, based on just that first line?
Repeat, sir.
The first line, can you think of an example in Jamaica? Or if you want to read the entire thing and give me an example in Jamaica.
Sir, with when let's say the US or Canada or I think maybe England as well, when the nurses they take like nurses and doctors from Jamaica. Wait, no, sir.
No, that would not be
No,
an
that would
example.
be. Sir, would it, when they what is it called again? No, I don't think that would be it. All right.
Can anybody think of an example of outsourcing? It's actually stated in the thing, so I'm not sure why we're struggling to give an example. Can anybody give an example of outsourcing in Jamaica?
Sir, with the call centers?
Yes, but it's actually here. They actually said it. India has become a center for not there, but there's a section.
No, sir. It's something about English language.
It's there, man. It's the
Is it?
customer call centers for
Right, exactly.
Oh.
Exactly. That's a perfect example of outsourcing in Jamaica. It's a perfect example. And you notice they're popping up all over Jamaica now. The last time I was in Jamaica, I didn't even know that where accident general insurance is because I went to insure my car. And when I looked, I saw this massive building behind. I was like, what the hell is going on? And I saw a former student of mine, actually from Exed. And I said, what are you doing? He said, sir, I work at the call center here, When I drove around just to, Jamaican, we're fast and we want to know people business. I drove around and the building was massive. Massive. It's because of cheap labor. Part of it is because of cheap labor. And this is why you hear so many Jamaicans complain about call centers, but these companies are very smart. They find countries where they can get the most by giving, but giving the least in terms of, it's call centers, they can't unionize or anything like that. And they're showing us some examples in terms of the wage gaps in countries. So for example, in the US is $29.40 per hour versus India, which is $6.30 per hour. And it's kind of similar to Jamaica, where they have to pay a certain amount in like the United States versus a country such as India, where the wage is much lower. Even my own experience here in Canada, once I understood the system. So when I graduated from college here, I was working at a company where I was doing marketing, human resource, and teaching, and I was getting $15 an hour. And I worked there for over a year. Then because of the pandemic, I was back and forth with Jamaica and still working at Excelsior. And when I came back to Canada in October, I started teaching at a language center, and they were paying me $23 an hour. And he was like, oh, that's the highest. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So I have a master's degree, but I must work for $23 for hour. I said, you must be freaking mad. And once I resigned from Excelsior, I was like, $22 an hour cannot sustain me in Canada. And I started working at a university, and much better salary, much better salary. It's not the best, but it's way better. At least I get a salary now. And when I was there, I said to myself, I ain't staying either, because I'm still below 50,000 a year. And one of my friends who's Jamaican, he got a job where he's getting 60 a year. I was like, what? And you don't have a master's and I have only getting that kind of job? Not that I think that he should not have, because of course he's in a different market than I. And what happens is that I just did an interview and I got a job, and I'm getting close. I'm still not at 60, but I'm very close. Yeah, so you find that there's a lot of, even in terms of some of the jobs that even locals do in Jamaica, even for if you're a teacher or a police or a nurse, it's an embarrassment what the government is actually paying you. You literally can't survive on that. And this is why sometimes you find police officers participating in corruption, and people say, oh, them are thief, them join the police force because them want to thief people money. Sometimes life is hard. I'm not excusing any kind of criminal behavior, but people sometimes, do stupid things when they need an income. In Jamaica, they wanted to wear a tie and long sleeve shirt, but the salary can't buy the tie and the long sleeve shirt. You can't. Men clothes are very expensive. When I was there, my shoes would cost, one pair of shoes would cost like $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000. It's not that you are going to buy the very expensive shoes, but as a male, you have to buy a good pair of shoes, or else you're going to be constantly going back and be buying and buying and buying and buying and buying. So outsourcing is one way of how many companies, when they want to go international, they use outsourcing many times to the disadvantage of the host country. And I know we have our presenter today, so I have not forgotten that. Who is presenting today? Or person, I think it's two presenters actually. Who are the presenters for today?
Sir, I believe I'm the one presenting today.
Okay, wonderful. Give me a sec. All right, here what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you to present for me, Kenya, and I need to rest my voice a little, okay?
Okay, sir, no problem.
Yeah, let me rest my voice a little.
Hurry up, hurry up. Good night, everyone. Are you guys seeing my screen?
You are presenting tonight on international exchange rates?
Yes, sir.
That's not possible. Hold on. Stop sharing screen for me. That's not possible.
I'm going to rock out of my best friend, please.
Give me 1 sec. Let me check something. Presenting. Where are we? Oh no, you know what it is? I think this week is supposed to be. I think this is actually mid-semester week, you know. Let's just double check the modules. Right, 18-2. It's Javar. It's Javar and Kemar who's supposed to present today. It's not your week to present. Because I know that's not possible for you to be. You're long, way down. There's no way you're presenting because I haven't even touched that. We're looking at descriptive and prescriptive international trade theories. So Alri is looking at descriptive and Demari is not like, no, Jafar, you presented already, right?
Right, sir.
Right. So this week is supposed to be mid-semester. Actually, there's no presentation this week. This is actually mid-semester week. So I'm going to give you what I said next week. No, actually should give you your mid-semester on Friday then. Because this is
honestly, I would prefer this Friday too, because on that next week Friday we'll have an exam before your class. So another mid-semester before your class.
right. So mid-semester on Friday, because that's why we don't have any presentation this week. This week is actually no presentation. This is supposed to be mid-semester week. And then we go back to the presentations. All right, let's take a 10-minute break. I really need to rest my voice, okay? Let's take 10 minutes break and then we come back, okay?
Okay.
Right.
All right, let's continue. So we talked about outsourcing. We talked about that. The other thing now is partnerships and strategic alliances. So before I say anything, I want you to just look at this and tell me what you understand by partnerships and or strategic alliances.
Sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so based on what I'm seeing, partnership and strategic alliances. For example, two local companies come together on a contractual agreement to enter into a new market,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they have to have some common goals of what they actually want to achieve.
But usually it's not two domestic companies that try to enter a new market, though. It's usually an international company that partners with a local company. So you have one international company in a country that, or let's say a company in like America partners or forms strategic alliances with a company in Jamaica. So I just wanted to be careful in terms of the wording.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was looking at it from that angle. For example, I think, for example, the juice I just showed earlier, the Grace product, like, for example, it's a Canadian company, but they want to get a piece of the Jamaican market. So they enter through Grace Kennedy, which is a well-known company.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Perfect example. So they want to get a piece of the Jamaican market because Jamaica, for example, Jamaicans love coconut water and they also love to try new things. So the international company or the Canadian company might just partner with a Grace Kennedy because Grace Kennedy is an already established brand in Jamaica, well respected, sells beverages and food items and so forth. And it would make perfect business sense for the two of them to actually join alliance or form a partnership to achieve a business objective. All right, so this is another way of how a company might enter a new market or might participate in international trade. Is it clear? Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I remember one time I went on a field trip to Grace Kennedy. You know, they were giving us a tour through the warehouse. And actually, when I did not know that it was so much product, you know, Grace Kennedy actually distribute for other companies, both international and local. It is a few product that Grace Kennedy actually owns for themselves, you know.
They have a business model and they understand the business model. Many companies you see all over the world, most of the times it's based on partnership and all of that. And it makes perfect business sense. It means that Grace Kennedy, some of the operational costs, they don't have to think about that cost of production because all they're doing, they're just a distributor for another brand. So they don't have to produce it and pay workers and, you know, do all of that madness. They really don't have to do that. Does everybody else understand? Because I know one person has spoken, but I just want to ensure that everybody understands.
Yes, listening and getting a grasp.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so strategic alliances and joint ventures now have become increasingly popular in recent years. They allow companies to share the risks and resources required to enter international markets. And although returns also may have to be shared, they give a company a degree of flexibility not afforded by going it alone through direct investment. So you can have a situation where that was mentioned before, where you might have two Canadian companies combining together in order to enter an international market. That can also be, so they form a partnership and enter an international market. There are several motivations for companies to consider partnership as they expand globally, including facilitating market entry, risk and reward sharing, technology sharing, very important, joint product development, conforming to government regulations. Sometimes one company understands it a little bit better than the other. Sometimes one company is more aligned to a particular government or understands the bureaucracy of a country, and it makes sense to just align with them. And it could be just be that the company is already well established in a country, and is a mere international agreement would not prevent the international company from really operating in the country, because it would have, because of the partner with whom they are having, the partner with whom they have an agreement, all the bureaucracy is removed or is relatively nil. Such alliances are favored when the partners' strategic goals converge while their competitive goals diverge. The partners' size, market share, and resources are small compared to the industry leaders, and partners are able to learn from one another while limiting access to their own proprietary skills. I must apologize for the coughing, but as I said, because I'm talking so much, it's going to cause me to do a lot of coughing. So an alliance can serve a number of purposes: enhancing marketing efforts, building sales and market share, improving products, reducing production and distribution costs, sharing technology, and some of these things we had mentioned before. And they give us some examples in terms of alliances. So magazine publisher Hearst, for example, has joint ventures with companies in several countries. So young women in Israel can read Cosmo Israel in Hebrew, Russian women can read it in their own language, and it's all over the world. These are just continued discussion about the partnerships. The other one now is acquisitions. And what comes to mind when you hear the word acquisition or acquisitions, or what other word or root word can you think of? Is there a smaller word we can form from acquisition, or we can think of?
Acquire.
Right, acquire. All right, so let's take a minute and read this and tell me what you understand from it. Any thoughts?
So I'm gonna try to analyze it still. What I am getting from this actually is that acquisition is, for example, an ex-company taking over a next company by purchasing it, right? For example, you have like a Toyota taking over a different car will actually exist. You know, Toyota is a well-established company. That would give the next company where them buy out the privilege to take on new parts of the world. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, something like that. So it's just one, you might have an international company that wants to do something in Jamaica. Let us say that they want to enter into something like what Yellow does. I'm sure you guys know Yellow, and Yellow is a marketing company that has a broad reach. They might just approach Yellow, a Canadian company or a US company, and say, okay, sell us, we will buy you, we pay you off, you know, pay off your debts, whatever it is, and just sell us a company. What that means is that they would definitely gain access to everything, to Yellow's, you know, clients, business model, everything. Another way to think about it is many, you find acquisitions a lot in entertainment too, where when companies, you know, like I'm not sure if you know that, like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, all of those are actually trademarks. As much as we see them as action figures, they are really trademarks. In other words, these are brands that that can be monetized. So if I want to gain access, or let's just say company A wants to gain access to Superman or Batman in terms of monetizing it, all they have to do, sometimes they don't have to buy Batman, the trademark itself, they just buy the company that owns it. Does it make sense now?
Yeah, man, make only sense.
Yeah, so and this happens a lot, especially developed countries buying or acquiring companies in developing countries, because especially when their currency is much higher, it means that the cost is actually cheaper for them. So if they tell, if a company is being sold, it's like Mr. McCarthy, our principal, I think he sold his, don't tell him I said this, I think he sold his cable company some years ago for 5 million US. But a US company buying that's not a lot of money. 5 million US for Jamaicans is a lot. But a US company that has a lot of resources, a lot of capital, $5 million is a drop in the bucket. So quickly they're going to buy it. And then they can gain access now. In terms of setting up shop, I think it was Digicel or Flow or one of those companies. All right, so think about acquisition in terms of acquiring. All right. So what you find, though, some countries have restrictions in terms of acquisitions because they feel that some countries are using it to spy on them. So even when was it? Last week I was watching a report on CNN, and they blocked China from buying a company or a building in America because in their mind, what the Chinese want to do it was too close to the US capital. They felt that if China was able to buy the company and the actual and gain access to the location, one of the physical assets of the company, then they would use that as a way to spy on the American lawmakers. So they blocked it. So you have countries that do that. They try to prevent these kinds of things because acquisition is another way, not only for companies to actually go to find new markets, but it's also a way for companies to spy. All right. I think this is the last one we're going to discuss. Foreign direct investment. Anybody, have you ever heard that term, foreign direct investment? Just read a snippet and tell me if you understand what you understand from or by the term foreign direct investment.
Sir.
Yes.
Yeah, so kind of read it still. As I said, foreign direct investments, right? As it states, foreign direct investment, these are persons internationally from a different country.
Companies, why you keep saying persons? It can be company or persons.
Yeah, company or persons who wish to invest in our next country directly. I was looking at it from the hotel perspective. Because enough of them hoteliers here, you know, they are international international companies. For example, I think a big one they don't country the name again. But a couple of them they're all about over the world. You know, so as Jamaica as a country, they invest in Jamaica because they would realize that Jamaica is a tropical country that tourists love to visit. You know, so I was looking at it from that angle, where companies or persons investing in countries which have certain, where people actually love actually. Just like I said, the hotel as an example.
Right. So that's a perfect example of foreign direct investment. You know, a lot of hoteliers, I think almost a whole lot of the hotels are the very established hotels in Jamaica are actually owned by a foreigner or a foreign company. They are not locally owned. So those are examples of foreign direct investment. You do have China Harbor too. That is there. They do a lot of foreign direct investment in Jamaica. And I did share something in the WhatsApp group about who visited Jamaica, the government of Jamaica, and we're talking about investing in Jamaica. I shared it in the WhatsApp group some time ago. All right, so please go and check in the WhatsApp group.
So repeat.
Which country or people, group of persons came to Jamaica? A group of investors came to Jamaica and greeted the government. I'm asking, from where were these persons?
Hold on, I think I remember, but I don't want to mix them up. Was it from Saudi Arabia?
Right, so we had those persons from Saudi Arabia. And that in and of itself, again, will represent foreign direct investment. We're going to have an entire discussion about foreign direct investment, looking particularly at the history and all of that. Let me just see. So foreign direct investment refers to the formal establishment of business operations on a foreign soil, the building of factories, sales offices, and distribution networks to serve local markets in a nation other than the company's home country. On the other hand, offshoring occurs when the facility set up the foreign country replace US manufacturing facilities and are used to produce goods that will be sent back to the US. And we talked about offshoring. Shifting production to low-wage countries is often criticized as it results in loss of jobs for not just the United States. So FDI is generally the most expensive commitment that a firm can make to an overseas market, and it's typically driven by size and attractiveness of target market. And this is why many of these foreign direct investors and companies, they try to get as much from the government before setting up shops. So for example, tax waivers or tax holidays, like 10 to 15 years. They try to employ locals at minimal, pay them a certain salary or a certain wage and give them certain types of jobs because they're trying to reduce their own expense. Sometimes they want to bring in your own people. In other words, they bring people who are already a part of the company, so they literally don't have to really pay them any new salary. So all of those things happen. So for example, German and Japanese automakers, such as BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, and Honda, have serious commitments to the US market. Most of the cars and trucks that they build in plants in South and Midwest are destined for sale in the United States. My God, I'm not sure what's all right. So can you just take a glance at this and tell me what you're understanding so I can not talk? Any comments?
So, sir, an example separate from the examples shown of a parent company would Grace be like a parent company or Nesquik?
Would Grace be a parent company? Yeah, Grace would be the parent company.
Okay. As it has subsidiaries, it's supposed to have subsidiaries in other countries separate from. Well, Jamaica is supposed to be one of the subsidiaries that it has.
No, Jamaica cannot be. Jamaica is the headquarters.
Yeah.
Jamaica is the
Okay.
headquarters. Cannot be.
I wasn't really sure. Yeah, but it has subsidiaries in different other countries, I'm sure. Okay.
I'm not sure if they do. You need to check. Don't make the assumption. Because what they might do is just export. Remember that Grace might just use export as their way to enter international market instead of having like subsidiary companies all over the world, because that too comes with expenses. So they might just sell directly like to Walmart, or so they sell to a distributor or a wholesaler or a retailer instead of trying to set up their own thing in the country, in for example in Canada or in the United States. I hope you understand what I mean by that.
Sir, I just see something about subsidiaries in its financial division, so.
Well, as I said, be careful of just reading. You have to be very careful, when you're at this level, you have to ensure that you read things thoroughly and properly and not just, quickly go on the internet and find something that answers your question. Sometimes it might be information that is not research-based or accurate. It's just somebody who wrote something and put on the internet. All right. So I'm not saying that they do have subsidiaries, and I'm not saying that they have subsidiaries. I'm just saying that ensure that if you make such a claim in any paper for me, you actually have to make sure that you have.
It's on their official website, but it's for specifically their financial services division.
Okay. Well, which would make sense because it would be, for example, Western Union, or they probably work with they probably I don't think they are the ones who do Western Union. I think they do, what's the other one called again?
First Global one?
No, the Send Money one, man, that one. Remember the subsidiary, it would be in a foreign country, you know, so it wouldn't be a bank. It would be like a MoneyGram kind of thing. I think it's MoneyGram. I'm not sure if they own MoneyGram, but that's what comes to mind as a perfect example of it.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's all right. So as I said before, we're going to have a big discussion about foreign direct investment in terms of its origin, coming all the way from even being linked to the transatlantic slave trade. So all of those quote unquote who foreign directly invested in parts of the Caribbean and in continental Africa. All of that is actually considered as well parts of foreign direct investment, and how especially during the after World War II, and especially during the 1990s, when there is a opening up or there's a full embrace of the economic philosophy of liberalization, that ramped up foreign direct investment. And you'll see that some persons think that foreign direct investment is just, developed countries or companies in developed countries investing in countries, developing countries, but actually you do have companies in developed countries directly investing in other developed countries, because it depends on the product that they have, and that would be necessary. For example, think of a BMW. BMW is a very expensive brand. It makes no sense, in my mind, to, for example, set up a subsidiary in Jamaica, because as much as Jamaicans drive BMW, I don't know that they sell all that many BMW every single day. It would make better sense or make better business sense to set up in countries where they have a certain level of income and even a certain quality of lifestyle. In other words, where people can actually afford to buy vehicles of that caliber. All right, any questions, comments? I'm going to go into foreign direct investment in the other class, but I'm not going to go any further. Any question, comments, queries, concerns?
Sir, I want to say mid-semester Friday.
Yeah.
What time, sir?
We are going to do it in the second half of the class.
Sir, can I have a rough time Friday, and that's why I'm asking.
What do you mean by that?
I will be at work basically all day. Friday up to we open at night.
So which day is better for you? Wednesday?
Next week Wednesday? Yeah, man, next week Wednesday.
No, but we have to have the presentation. What I don't want to do is to throw off everything.
Oh.
I don't want to throw it off, because it's very difficult. Remember we're ending in, we actually only have probably about 2 weeks or so left for summer school. So we have to do it on Friday. So just dialogue with me and we'll see how we can work around it, okay?
All right, sir, no problem.
Yeah.
So, could you remind us where we tested on?
Up to let me just look at the paper and give you a sense. Let me stop sharing screen. Where did I save it now? Up to what we covered tonight. What more before? So about NAFTA and WTO and GATT and the different trade theories. It's 20 questions. We looked at the integration and regional policies. All of that. All right, so it's up to module 4. More module up to module unit 1 to unit 4. I don't think you'll get any much from unit 5, to be honest. So it's units 1 to 4. Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Same to you.